the Office of the Vice President has been allocated confidential funds amounting to 500 million pesos. According to Joint Circular number 2015-01 issued by the COA, DBM, DILG, CGC, GCG, and DND, confidential funds refer to those expenses related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of that agency. So, una pong tanong dito, Madam Vice President, which mandates of the Office of the Vice President will be supported by the aforementioned allocation of the confidential funds, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, all of the projects of the Office of the Vice President use the confidential funds that is intended for the safe, secure, and successful implementations of programs, projects, and activities and engagements of me and all the satellite offices, including the central office of the Office of the Vice President.
Salamat kayo, Madam VP. Kanina po sabi nyo yung primary mandates ng office nyo in the next 6 years would be in support of the primary mandates of the OP. So, alin po sa mga primary mandates na yon as you conceive them in support of the primary mandates of the OP, alin sa mga primary mandates na yon ang masusuportahan or specifically gagastusan ng confidential funds na i-allocate ng Kongreso sa office nyo?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, the constitutional mandate of the Office of the Vice President is only to be a reserve, a bench warmer, in the event of, I do not want to mention it, but in the event that the President cannot discharge his functions, that is the constitutional mandate of the Office of the Vice President. Apart from that, all the other projects of the Office of the Programs, Projects, and Activities of the Office of the Vice President will depend largely on the decision and discretion of the incumbent elected Vice President. So for my term, we decided on 3 permanent projects: the charter, the museum, and the permanent office and residence of the Office of the Vice President. And then we took on the projects that made the most impact when I was mayor of Davao City. These are the entrepreneurship program, the peace building in communities, the Pagbabago advocacy campaign. We added the Pagbabago A Million Trees for in support of the mandate of the DNR. And then we have the Pansarap program in support of the Department of Health and the Department of Education. And then we created the Disaster Operations Center in support of NDRIMC and all those local governments who are asking for help from the Office of the Vice President when there are calamities or emergencies in their localities. And the buses donated to me, I lent to the Office of the Vice President to support the Libreng Sakay program of the national government. In addition to that, I discharge the functions and the duties of the Secretary of the Department of Education. And in addition to that, I was tasked by the President to co-chair the National Task Force on Ending Local Communist NTF-LCAC. And in addition to that, I also took on the role of President of the Southeast Asian Education Ministers Organization, SIMEO. And all of these activities use confidential funds.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice President, so nasagot nyo na yung follow-up question ko. Kung ibig nyo pong sabihin, lahat nito, starting with the bench warming and being a reserve, and then yung entrepreneurship program, yung peace building, yung pansarap, yung million trees, yung pagbabago advocacy, yung disaster operations center, yung libreng sakay, and yung binanggit nyong 3 permanent projects, the permanent office, the VP's Museum, and the Omnibus Law or Charter. Bawat isa sa mga ito gagastusan ng confidential funds ng opisina nyo?
Yes. Mainly, the confidential funds, as I said, is for the safe, secure, and successful implementations of the programs, projects, and activities and engagements of the Office of the Vice President.
Just to clarify, Madam VP, since confidential funds refer to those agencies related to surveillance activities undertaken by civilian government agencies, ibig po bang sabihin na yung opisina ninyo will be gathering intelligence on certain subjects or entities in support sa inyong mandates o mga operasyon, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, that is correct. As an example, we did surveillance of complaints from constituents in Bulacan with regard to the selling of OVP assistance and the selling of tupad projects in Bulacan. And there was a surveillance operation that was run by the VP SPG for about a month, and we were able to apprehend the person, and we were able to successfully prosecute the case, and that person went to jail for ilang months?
6 months.
For 6 months. So that is an example of the surveillance activities that is conducted by the VP-SPG for the projects and activities of the Office of the Vice President. It was in Bulacan.
Salamat kaayo, Madam VP. I ask this because the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency was established to direct, coordinate, and integrate national intelligence activities. And this includes the collation of intelligence gathered from various sources. So we'd like more information as to the intelligence operations of the OVP. Sa aling mga sources maggagather ng impormasyon yung OVP? Kukuha ba kayo ng intelligence mula sa ating mga existing intelligence services tulad ng NICA o tulad ng DND at PNP?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, no. Intelligence starts with the communities and the stakeholders, and then if there are complaints, and then it is built up through intelligence and surveillance services, and then a dossier or a report is started, and then it goes through levels through the Office of the Vice President and VP SPG. So we do not seek intelligence reports from other government agencies, but the intelligence reports starts from the ground in the communities that that are engaged by the Office of the Vice President. The Office of the Vice President can only propose the use of confidential funds based on Joint Circular 2015-01, but we leave it to the decision and discretion of the members of Congress who has the power of the purse to decide whether to grant confidential funds to our office. We can only propose, but we are not insisting. We can live without confidential funds. But of course, our work will be much easier if we have the flexibility of confidential funds in monitoring the safe, secure, and successful implementations of the programs, projects, and activities of the Office of the Vice President.